Audioversity, the voice of Reichman University.
כל האוניברסיטה Audioversity.
I met someone, his name is Mose. He lost his two parents in October, and the level of humanity and empathy that this guy showed me, just another proof that our humanity is much stronger than weapon. And you are absolutely right. I mean, if this person can just hug me and look in the eyes and tell me, I love you, after all what he has been through, everything and everyone can. Everything is possible.
Welcome to Raw, a podcast where we confront the complexities of war from the inside out. I'm Manouk, a journalist, author, yoga teacher, and meditation practitioner. Raw, or war spelled backwards, symbolizes how many of us feel in the face of the Israel-Gaza conflict: exposed, vulnerable, and seeking understanding. Here, we don't just discuss the external battles, but dive deep into our internal struggles, examining how this violence has shaken our very core. Join me in conversations with philosophers, psychologists, and spiritual leaders as we explore how to navigate these painful times with wisdom and resilience, finding guidance for our own paths through this raw, unfiltered world. Today on our podcast, we welcome Ali Abu Awwad, a distinguished Palestinian activist and the founder of Taghyeer, a movement dedicated to advancing nonviolence as a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Born into a family displaced by the 1948 war, Awad's early life was steeped in what he saw as resistance by any means, leading him to a 4-year prison sentence in Israel for his involvement in the First Intifada. In 1993, he and his imprisoned mother initiated a hunger strike, a defiant act of nonviolent resistance, aiming to be granted a meeting with each other. After enduring 17 days without food, they were allowed to see each other. This moment marked a pivotal shift in Awad's approach to activism, steering him towards nonviolence and reconciliation as tools for achieving his goals. Later, the killing of his brother by an IDF soldier solidified his trajectory towards nonviolence. Ali's journey from a militant to a proponent of nonviolence and dialogue has been globally recognized, earning him many awards. Here we talk about why it's so hard to give up violence, why he doesn't believe that Islamic fundamentalism is really the issue, and why some of the people that inspire him the most are sometimes the people you'd least expect, like his own enemies. Ali, welcome.
Thank you.
How do you say welcome in Arabic?
Marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan.
Marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan. I love languages and accents, and I started learning Arabic when I lived in London many years ago. And I remember one thing. Anna Sahafiya fi mahatat CNN.
Bravo. Sharrafna. Yeah.
And I don't know at all if this is like the right way to start this conversation. I'm usually someone, I just say whatever I think. And I'm very open about the workings of my mind, but and this might be really politically incorrect, but the situation that we live in is so terrifying sometimes that, you know, I've had like these sometimes subconscious moments where I think, oh my God, if I'm kidnapped and I say, Ana Sahafia, will it help? And gosh, I'm here, I'm talking to a Palestinian, and maybe that sounds super racist. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about that? By the way, Ana Sahafia means I'm a journalist. Just because I didn't say that for our listeners. It means I'm a journalist for CNN, which I was years ago.
Yeah. No, I think, listen, our main identity is humanity. So you are Sahafiya, you are Jewish, you are Israeli, I am Muslim, I'm Palestinian. I have never thought that ideology, religion, nationality represent who we are exactly, because we are beyond all of that by the end of the day. We are beyond materials, identities, but reaching that level needs a lot of strength, a lot of courage as well, because sometimes identity is like our secure area where we can just feel secure. The minute we step out of it, we freak out.
Absolutely.
So yeah, nonviolence has taught me courage, actually, more than even humanity.
We'll go a little bit. Well, I mean, we'll go a lot into that. But I was thinking something on the way over here in the car. I was thinking that when I was younger, I felt a lot of violence. And I know you probably thinking, what is this petite woman talking about violence? But I had moments where I felt that I had a lot of rage. I had a lot of rage, which probably came from a place of not having security and my ego being very wounded. And so if you cut me off in traffic, I could probably do something, given the wrong circumstances, that would have been violent. I remember back then, violence could feel delicious. And you feel empowered. You feel like there is an outlet for that rage. And you feel like you power over. And you feel like, I'm going to show you in the car, who just cut me off or whatever. I'm going to show you what I was never able to show, my mother, or, if you're a Palestinian, what I was never able to show the soldiers or whoever humiliated me, or, if I'm a Jewish Israeli, whoever didn't, whoever showed me that they were anti-Semitic, and I'm going to show you in the car in that moment how powerful I am. And then I was thinking about you preaching nonviolence, and I was thinking, like, you are taking something, you're asking people to give up something which they don't want to give up, because violence is not a hard thing to be in. Violence is the easy solution, which sometimes feels very good. So do you connect with what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. I have been digesting this all of those years. I mean, when people adopt nonviolence, when they act nonviolently, it doesn't mean that their anger has disappeared or their fear has disappeared. I think violence is authority, and violence is the fake power of control, but it's fake.
It's an illusion.
Yeah, many conflicts has been solved through violence, but has been agreed by non-violence. I mean, violence can bring you to solution. The problem is that after that, you have nothing to live for. When I joined a hunger strike in prison, me and my mother, both of us were in prison, 1993. After 3 years in prison, every day I wanted to meet her. She was in Telmond, Hasharon, and I was in Hebron. 3 years asking every week, every month to visit my mother in her other prison, and Israel always refused. Then we decide to go for a hunger strike. 17 days of starvation, of anger, of, you're facing your death. Like you put your life on your hands. And after I succeed, we both succeed to meet through that hunger strike. I came back to my prison after I met her, very conflicted, very confused, because I was not fighting Israel. Actually, I was fighting the demon inside me, the devil inside, that was just give me legitimacy to hurt anyone, legitimacy for my legitimate, even political goal, believing that the struggle, the Palestinian struggle, by any means necessary is like legitimate. I was fighting that person. And nonviolence has taught me that it's easy to fight someone else because this is what violence offers you. But it's so hard to fight yourself, which nonviolence challenges you to do. And then after I saw her, I discovered that I was armed just by my right cause. But I was a bad lawyer. I mean, you cannot have a just case by being a bad lawyer, especially the court is unjust. So nonviolence has saved me. First, I achieved what I wanted. Number two, I managed to educate myself and see my humanity. But the third thing was the biggest lesson, where I have learned after many years of that, I have learned that many activists will tell you that my humanity in nonviolent struggle is my weapon. I have another philosophy. I say today that my enemy's humanity is my biggest weapon in nonviolence. Because when I act nonviolently, I leave them just armed with my humanity.
We project so much inhumanity. It's really, really, really easy to get swept up in an idea that we are right, they are wrong, everybody on the other side, like some Israelis have said, like they're all animals, they all want every Jew dead. I find that if I could believe that, maybe my life would be easier. So I wonder if you find that there is a receptive audience for humanity, for seeing the humanity in others, for nonviolence these days, or is that audience smaller than ever? And I'm even wondering if you yourself, have you found yourself even in these last few months where you see the suffering inflicted also by Israelis on the people, on your people in Gaza? Are there moments where you forget the Israeli humanity?
No, nonviolence for me is a task, is a mission, is an ideology, it's an identity. And it's very hard. On the other hand, one of the biggest problems within the Israeli society, they live in their own bubble. And when something happened like October or even before October has happened many times, but in a smaller acts, they're not able to face the truth. And for a sudden, when an event come up, they don't ask themselves, maybe this is the consequences of lack of responsibility among another nation. Maybe this is the consequences of ignoring the roots of the problem, trying to deal with just the leaves, which means that give Palestinians some permissions to work, give Palestinians some economic conditions, medical aid, all of these just to feel good with themselves, ignoring the surgery, the painful surgery, which is the political deal. On the other hand, we Palestinians also have a big problem. We were confused between two identities. Like myself, before Oslo Peace Initiative, I used to identify with this revolutionary identity against the occupier. Under that, everything is legal, everything is possible, everything must happen. Whatever, what kind of resistance doesn't matter. We are right. We want our freedom. And we lost. We lost our direction. Worse than that, after Oslo, there was suddenly a new identity. It's not the identity of fighting Israel. It's the identity of having peace with Israel. So from revolutionary identity to citizenship identity. But this citizenship identity has never been practiced because there was never a state. And then the second Intifada started. We become more confused. Shall we go back to the weapon and fight, or shall we just keep following the Palestinian Authority and the Oslo hope while our life on the ground is so miserable day by day? And until today, we wake up in the morning, who represent us? What does it mean to be a Palestinian? I mean, in Israel, it's obvious. Being a good Israeli, you respect your country, you go to the army, you serve security, you go back to your life, try to live, try to study, try to be. But country comes first. Israel first. Here in Palestine, what is first? Is it political part? Is Hamas first? Is Fatah first? Is the PA first? Is Oslo first? Is nonviolence first? We don't know. And that's why when you say majority and minority, I think we peace nonviolence activists are the minority that represent the silent majority. Also in Israel as well. The majority are silent, are busy in this machine of life. Being an Israeli is a nightmare. You wake up in the morning, you run, kids, work, state, fear, surrounded with Arab world who want to throw us to the sea. I mean, it's not easy. I don't wish to be that. But also, our life is not much better. I mean, we live the same. So for those politicians or militant or violent or radical people, they just use the fear of the majority and invest it in conflict. They just use the silence of majority. They just use the anger of majority, but they are not the majority. The minute we, change makers, will realize that, we will come up with a clear approach, a strategic, massive act that will promote responsibility and deal with the confusion between the two identities to make it very clear. Nonviolence will represent our just case, but also will resist injustices. And I have been telling Palestinians, I don't want to resist the Israeli occupation. I want to end the Israeli occupation. And there is a big difference. Because resistance is an identity of anger, of refusing injustices. Ending is about responsibility. How do you create alternative system that will replace fear, suffering, anger, militant acts? This is how do I live it.
I'm curious about you, if we may talk, a little bit more on the personal level. In addition to having been imprisoned yourself, and your mother was imprisoned, she was very active politically in Fatah. And in addition to that, your brother was killed by an Israeli soldier. Do you have other people in your surroundings, in your family, in your friend circle, who have been able to adopt the nonviolent position as radically as you have? And do you still have people that you love, that you care about, that profoundly disagree with nonviolence?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes, definitely. In every society, you will have those and you will have those. But based on my experience, the first meeting I did when I started thinking about creating a Palestinian national nonviolence movement, I didn't go to those who agree with me. It was even filmed. That meeting has just gave me strength to go on. I met 60 wanted Palestinian Al-Aqsa murder brigades in Geneva. And we spoke for 4 hours. And I chose a very fancy location so the army will not realize that we are there. And I remember a guy who was I think 19 years old, with his M16 sitting next to me. And we speak nonviolence, okay? And he started crying. He started telling me when he lost his mother and his brother. And the only thing that left for him is this piece of, iron. It's called weapon. People go to violence not because they want to die or they like to die or they like to, sacrifice themselves. Nothing more important than life for human being. This is the fact that even God created. But people lose their fear to die. And there is also lack of understanding about nonviolence. The nonviolence that I speak about today is not the hummus and hugs, because we're tired of that. We did a lot. Not the nonviolence to fly to Cyprus with Israelis and we love each other, or we at least agree with each other. It's not when we send our kids to Maine for 3 weeks,
Coexistence camp?
Whatever, and these kids go back to refugee camps and Israeli kids go back to Herzliya. This is not the nonviolence that I'm talking about. And by the way, these kids get more traumatized than before because they have seen that the world is much beautiful than their refugee camp. And their enemies are not exactly devils. Their enemies is just like them, human beings. But they cannot see it in their reality. What the hell we are doing? So what I advocate for as for a nonviolence to be an identity, to build your own society as a responsibility, but also it's a very strategic political act. It's not just good intention. Most of the organizations want to do transformation. If you transform someone and bring him back to a miserable reality, I'm not sure he will stick to that transformation. He will struggle because of that, actually. So any human nonviolence, debate, dialogue, everything has to be followed by a practical steps on the ground based on understanding of the different needs of both sides. In Palestine, the needs are tremendous. It's not just transforming people, it's changing people's life condition. And this is what Israelis and many Israelis doesn't understand.
Let me tell you something that I hear quite a lot. A lot of what Israelis and even commentators around the world will answer is saying, you're not taking into consideration Islamic fundamentalism. The fact that, and they will use the words, these people believe in martyrdom. And so everything is out of the equation. You can't talk in a way about goals, about living together when your interlocutor is celebrating death. And so it's a difficult question, and it's even hard for me to ask it of you, but I think it's really important.
I always like to speak facts and to answer by facts, because answering by emotions or beliefs, I'm not sure people will believe it at all. How many Muslims citizens of Israel today?
2 million?
Almost 2 million. And they belong to the same Muslim people of Gaza. So why these have not become fanatics, why others are labeled as fanatics? That's a live example, if it's about Islam. Number two, even though the Palestinian Israelis inside Israel are not also treated with 100% democracy and rights. There are big challenges there, and I know. By Israeli friends, I know. By Jewish friends. So that's my proof that it's not about religion. Number two, I think religion in this conflict, Judaism and Islam, has been invested so deep in politics. The conflict is political, but the religious values of the conflict has been raised so far in politics. That's number two. And we both know how many evidence are there by both sides when we use religion in politics, whether by settlers to legitimize their political act, going back to the Jewish roots of the identity, which is right. You cannot argue that. You cannot tell a Jew that your Judaism was born in Herzliya. No, it was born in Hebron. You cannot just... So that's number two. Number three is the failure of our political approach for not including religious right in a political management of the conflict. I think Jews has to have full right to practice who they are, as the same as Palestinian, in a political framework that will allow these two identities to thrive, but not at the expense of each other. We have Christians living in Bethlehem. They go to pray in their churches. After Oslo, we voted for our constitution under the PA. Not even a constitution for a country, an independent country. A constitution for the PA that's still under occupation. The constitution that we elected, we voted for, was a secular one. In Palestine, in the territories, in whatever you want to call it, our law is not Islamic even. I raised two questions among Palestinians and among Israelis, just to get rid of this. I said, we Palestinians are facing a big challenge that we were ignoring all of those years. Are we ready to recognize the legitimate, historical, ideological, national existence of the Jewish people on this land? Do we recognize that belonging? Or we just recognize the right of Israel to exist? There is a big difference between the two recognition. And we must. Then, Jewish people and Israelis, are you occupying people for security, or are you occupying land for ideology? That's a big question that Israelis are not able to answer. So we are both stuck because we don't want to recognize each other. Let's dig there, bring that recognition. Then any fanatic, I will be the first Muslim to fight fanatic because they don't represent me. This is not the Islam that I know.
You know, the information age has brought this illusion that we're all closer and kind of easily accessible to one another. But really, I see it myself. I can live my entire life in Tel Aviv, in Israel, and never meet or speak with a Palestinian, and therefore never really humanize a Palestinian through direct experience.
I can kind of have this moralistic notion that we're all humans, but I don't really feel it. And so we can live really close to one another and yet be in our own little bubbles or echo chambers, whatever you want to call it, interacting with the same people who have the same views. And yet if we kind of try to imagine, like taking a bird's eye view for a moment, I can kind of see from above all these people, like an acquaintance who recently wrote in a chat group that October 7th was predicted in some obscure passage in the Bible, and that, God predicted we're going to be victorious. And I can imagine some Palestinians saying the same thing about some passage in the Quran. And then if I look from above, I can kind of see all these wounded, enraged, Palestinians turning to violence, and all these wounded, enraged Israelis responding with violence. And I can just see all these wounded children in adult bodies trying to make sense of their world. And really what they're doing is suppressing the common humanity, which is that we are all deeply wounded and afraid and angry and defended, and we just want someone to see us, to tell us that we're going to be okay, we're going to be safe, and that what we're feeling is legitimate, that we're not inherently bad people. It's kind of like we're all looking to just be reassured. And if we feel safe enough, then we can turn towards the other.
I came back from Geneva 10 days ago. There was a big gathering, a serious one. I cannot give a lot of information, but I have to say, I met someone, his name is Mose. He lost his two parents in October, and
an Israeli.
Yeah. The level of humanity and empathy that this guy showed me, just another proof that our humanity is much stronger than weapon. And you are absolutely right. I mean, if this person can just hug me and look in the eyes and tell me, I love you, after all what he has been through, everything and everyone can. Everything is possible. Yes, we are traumatized. The trauma of our history and the trauma of our reality that's still managing our politics as well. And that's why nonviolence is to reconcile not with the other, to reconcile first with ourselves. We need to love ourselves for us to be able to love anyone. I'm not sure we are there. I mean, as a consequences of this history, of the Holocaust, of the Nakba, of all of these stations that both sides has been through. And what make it worse, and I always say that, it's a conflict between two victims who are having this competition of suffering. We want to prove who suffers more. We are in this marathon of suffering, not marathon of life, of hope, of solution. We are competing over pain. We want to own it. We want to own our pain because this is the secure place where we feel secure and we can justify our acts against ourselves and against others. This is the deep psychology as also of the conflict. And that's why just by nonviolence, we can transform ourselves and transform others. And by the way, I have never thought that dialogue is the final game. No, even if we have dialogue. In my opinion, dialogue is the secure place for argument. We're not secure to argue. We're afraid. We're afraid even to talk politics when we get together, because if we talk politics, we will be divided and we will get angry and we will be pissed off because of the other, because we don't understand the values of effective dialogue. We need help. It's okay to say we need help.
Where does your courage and strength come from?
You know, after I lost my brother, I'm a refugee, serving years in prison. My life, believe me, has all the things that can happen to human being to turn him to be the biggest terrorist on earth. But nonviolence has taught me that my brother will never come back. The Nakba that my family experience will not have a just solution. Exactly like the Holocaust, there is no justice there. Has taught me, stop seeking for justice. Act for a fair solution. I believe in justice just as a value. Because Malcolm X said, justice is just us. I'm not expecting justice from anyone. Because justice is to be just to myself. Being just to myself is not to allow the victimizer to bury my humanity in the same grave of my brother. That's being just to myself. Being just to myself is to give my life a meaning every day. That instead of being a victim of someone, I'm gonna celebrate this existence by changing people's lives. That's the highest value of my living every day. And this philosophy comes from people like you, that you do everything possible. You're having me now, and this is not something for granted. You having me and showing me to whomever is gonna listen to this, to tell them the other side is not a devil, but we have to understand why people take actions against us. Why also their acts, which is not legitimate, how can we bring the other side to admit that it's not just us, they also have responsibility? The minute we understand that, this is the highest empathy on earth, to realize that no one is gonna disappear from this land. I mean, you don't need to be Mandela to make peace. You just need responsibility. You need a good leadership, and you need to recognize and see that the fact is these two legitimate identities will not get over each other. They just thrive together. That's the only way, because each side, with my sorrow, will fight until the last drop of blood, because this is the only place where we belong, where we can survive, both of us.
Who would you say inspired or inspires you most?
Few people. One like Robbie Damlin, an Israeli mother who is now in the Parent Circle Families Forum, the Bereaved Families Forum, משפחות שכולות, who have lost her son and write a letter to the sniper who killed her son, and made the most courageous step as a mother for the future of the rest of the people. She inspired me. And many other Israeli parents who I met, and I saw that they're not different than my mother or than my father. My mother inspired me, and I think Mandela has inspired me a lot. I mean, as a big figure.
And what brings you joy these days amongst it all? Where do you find joy?
My activism. My activism gives me joy and meaning of my existence, knowing that I'm going to be a reason of changing someone's life or saving someone's life. This gives me a lot of joy. Knowing that one day, Israelis and Palestinians will be marching the street, celebration the date of independence for two countries.
Ali, thank you so much for speaking with me. Shukran jazilan. Is that correct?
Bakasha.
It was such a pleasure speaking with you, and even though you say dialogue is not the point, and hummus and hugs, we're past that. I wish we could, like I said, meet in person and exchange tea, even though that's not what's going to solve the conflict. But I really appreciate it, and I wish you much luck and courage and strength and compassion and joy with your work and your mission.
Thank you so much. Let's agree that dialogue is the key, but it's not the road.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. This has been Raw. To listen to more of our episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. I'm Anouk Glory. Goodbye.